Hello and welcome to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things relating to your well-being, including interviews with experts in the fields of nutrition, physical and mental health, and my 5-minute food fact series. I am Amanda Hayes, your host, a nutritionist with a passion for well-being. Before I introduce today's guests, I will take a moment to let you know that you can subscribe to my podcast on YouTube, hit the red subscribe button, or on your favourite podcast app, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. I will also mention that although I will often be speaking with experts, any information or advice provided on Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast is not intended to be used to treat, cure, or prevent injuries or medical conditions, and is not a substitute for advice from your own health professionals. Today it is my great honour to be here with Sarah Sutter and Jason Tyndall. Many of you have probably heard of Sarah because she is an Aussie netball star. That includes representing Australia in netball in 1995 in the World Championships, where Australia won a gold medal, and then again in 1998 at the Commonwealth Games, where Australia also won a gold medal. Apart from that, she played for many years for the Thunderbirds, which is South Australia's much-loved state netball team. So today, Sarah holds a Bachelor of Education with a major in physical education, and she is the CEO of Nature Play SA, and that is what we're here to talk about today. Jason Tyndall is the General Manager of Nature Play SA. His career started in environmental management, from where he moved into environmental education and joined Nature Play SA to work with Sarah. So Nature Play SA is an independent, not-for-profit organisation established in 2014. I believe the concept was started in Western Australia and initially funding was provided by the government. So the vision of Nature Play SA is to empower the South Australian community to engage their children in nature through outdoor learning and play. I'll leave it to Sarah and Jason to tell us more about what Nature Play SA does and the programs that it runs, but I'll quickly mention that this ties in very well with episode 17, where I discussed unstructured nature play and resilience building in children with Dr. Scott Cousins. So I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. Hi Sarah, hi Jason. Welcome to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast.
Thank you, Amanda. It's great to be here.
Hello and good morning.
Good morning. And Sarah, before we dive into our topic for today, I just can't sit here and not ask you about netball. So do you have a career highlight?
Oh, I think I've got many career highlights after playing at top level for over 15 years.
Wow.
But probably for me, representing your country, playing for Australia, being an Australian Diamonds, and probably playing netball at the first Commonwealth Games in 1998 and winning gold was, fantastic. But also winning premierships with the Thunderbirds and contacts and making lifelong friends and, playing in a team sport has just been sensational.
I have to say I watch a lot of netball because my girls play, and I do love watching it. I never played. I was a hockey person. So, it's a great sport. It's so fast.
Yeah, it really has, and it's really sort of progressed with the times, and it is a fantastic sport, especially for girls.
Yeah, it's terrific. All those years, over 15 years of playing high-level netball, what's that brought to your life, do you think?
Oh, it's brought a lot to my life, and I don't think I'd be the person I am now without playing in a team sport. So it's taught me to work together with a team, and taught me about leadership. But it's also made me the person who I am by travelling and meeting other people, and also seeing how far I can go as an individual and really making me the best person that I can be. So, physically and mentally, I've had challenges along the way, and I've lost grand finals, and I've been injured, but it's also taught me resilience and to keep on going. And if you work hard, you can, achieve the ultimate dream.
So anyway, now that we've got that out of the way, we can talk about Nature Play SA. So as I mentioned in the introduction, it's a not-for-profit organisation, and the vision is to empower the South Australian community to engage their children in nature through outdoor learning and play. So I'd like to ask each of you how you came to work at Nature Play SA. So Jason, I believe you started out in environmental management. So can you tell us a bit about your progression and how you ended up at Nature Play SA?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think with most people, my first interaction with nature started as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess moving into my teenage years, it probably went a bit dormant in me. I guess I was a bit too cool for nature, as you could say. And then as I got older, I was sort of searching my way, and I left school early and I came across a program called Green Corps. And Green Corps was basically a program for young kids, sort of 16 to 20. And we got out and we, poured up weeds and sort of went out into nature, into the hills, and did all those sorts of things.
Oh, cool.
And so that was for 6 months, and there was 10 of us, and there was a whole bunch of different kids. There was some kids that listened to punk music. There was some kids that listened to classical music. So it was a very diverse group.
That's great.
And from there, I realised that's kind of what I wanted to do, to work with nature, and I went back to the roots of my childhood. Then I moved into going to TAFE, and I gave that a crack, and then ended up in a horticultural apprenticeship, which got my hands dirty, learned to prune roses, that sort of stuff. Make lots of friends when you know how to prune roses. And then moved into a job as an arborist, so trimming trees and cutting down trees for a council.
Quite, with a big chainsaw hanging off you.
And cherry pickers. And I remember one of my first sort of trainee days when I got working as an arborist, we were cutting down a tree. It was a dead tree. And I had an ice cream container and I was rescuing all the geckos while they were trying to cut the tree down.
Really?
I was like 20 geckos, and the guys were just looking at me, like these old school council guys were looking at me, just sort of shaking their heads. But I just didn't want those geckos to get put through the chipper or anything. Put them all in it, and then I took them to a gully and I let them go.
You're a kind soul.
That's kind of, that's kind of what nature does to people, in a way. So from there I moved on and eventually got into uni. I never thought I could do it, but I did. Come out the other end and
excellent.
Went through that, and then started working for the local NRM board as an environmental educator, which was good. And I worked with kids with leadership programs, and again, just teaching them or showing them about nature. And when you show children things that spark their curiosity, that's where it all begins.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique form of communication to do that. So was there for many years as an environmental educator, and then got the tap on the shoulder from Sarah and said, come and work for us. So I didn't hesitate for that, because
fantastic.
Nature Play is just a beautiful combination of what I love, but also childhood development, which is so important. As a dad, I can see just how important that is. Yeah,
you're right. And Sarah, what about your path? So obviously there was netball, and then you qualified as a teacher. So how did you end up at Nature Play SA?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I was tapped on the shoulder because it was a newly formed organisation, and one of the board members said to me that you truly live the brand. You'll find me outside on my stand-up paddleboard in the ocean catching squid, and I'm forever surfing with my children and live a very outside lifestyle. And also I came back from Sydney teaching here, and I could see that the children they didn't have the gross motor skills, and they weren't taking risks, and I thought, wow, childhood is changing. And some parents said to me, thanks so much for taking my children to the park. Wow. I'm going, really? Isn't that just what you do? And then, I used to leave my children a bit on the beach while I go for a walk, and people going, oh, you can't do that. And I'm going, whoa, this is a really different, culture change here. And then I started reading Richard Louve's book, Last Child in the Woods, and, I could see that childhood was changing, and so that sort of really gave me the incentive to actually come and lead this organisation and to try and make a difference for these children. But also personally, like Jason, nature has always been a very big part of my life. when I was dropped from the Australian netball team or had a severe injury, I always went back to the ocean. And I think my times walking on the beach barefooted and looking out there, that has really helped me mentally and also physically. And then later in my life, after I had some children overseas in San Francisco, I had a rough sort of time after, and I think my time spending time out in the parks mentally really helped me get through a really rough time. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I have to say being out in nature is my medicine as well, and trail running's where it's at for me. That's what makes me happy.
Yeah, and I think, as an individual and as a society, I think we forget the power of nature. And we're seeing the children aren't having the opportunity to experience what we've experienced, and it's so powerful for us all.
Yeah, I think when we were children, and I discussed this with Dr. Scott Cousins, we were quite free range. We just went out all day, paddled around in the local creek, caught tadpoles, no phones, nothing, just got home in time for dinner. It's so different now, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Childhood has really changed, and it's what Jason and I have seen, the really risk-averse society we are seeing, and that's just even through the playgrounds, in the councils and the schools, and children aren't allowed to climb trees, and we come now in the driveway and we shut the fence, the gates close and the doors close, and you don't see those children on the streets, you don't see that social interaction, and unfortunately we're taking away the creeks, we're taking away those big blocks for the children to explore. They're now, you're getting 3 houses on it, and it really is, has changed.
Jason, can you tell us some of the reasons why you think it's important for children to engage with nature, and what are some of the benefits that you see in your work? Yeah,
sure. So we could spend all day talking about it, to be honest, but really it probably comes down to a few things, and one is childhood development. So developmentally, play is the work of a child, which is well put by Maria Montessori. But when we say developmental benefits, we're talking about emotional, we're talking about social, we're talking about physical, spiritual, all of those elements.
Everything.
And resilience as well, which is something these days we're seeing a spike in anxiety and depression in children.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're seeing a spike in obesity. We're seeing more need for speech pathology than we've ever seen. We're seeing all of these statistics. And we always reflect to say what's changed in children's lives, and what's changed is play. Yeah. And play is essentially, it's the social nucleus of childhood. It's what they do. There's teamwork, collaboration, there's understanding social cues, there's the physical activity, there's the emotional regulation. All of these elements are associated with play, with free play. And when we reduce that, we start to see those consequences.
Yeah, and I think you just said then free play, and I think that from what I've read, it's key, because structured play, sort of playing on your, I don't know, what are they called, Xboxes or things like that, that's not really play in the sense that you're using your imagination like you are when you're out in nature, and it's free and unstructured.
Yeah, and some of the things that make childhood so beautiful are curiosity, imagination. And as parents, we always say we want resilient children, we want independent children, we want decision makers. Yeah. All of that is at its height with free play. That's what we see. It's essentially an arena for children to be curious, to ask questions, to have the permission to do those things. And that's what we unknowingly as parents often do. We'll put walls up. We'll say, no, you can't use your imagination, or you can't use those decision-making skills which are associated with risk. So if we unpack it all, we start to see the restrictions childhood faces today, whereas back when we were children, it didn't happen like that.
Yeah. And either of you can answer this question. What is it about taking risks, do you think, that are important for children?
Decision-making is a really important one. But also I think some of the research has told us that if children don't take risks throughout their life, then when they are older in a position to make a decision, so for example, sit behind the wheel of a car, their decision-making around risk isn't developed. It's kind of like a muscle, if you think about it. So, we would think about when children do take risks, that feeling that we get. And often as parents, we will say, that's too dangerous.
Yeah.
When really what we're saying to a child is, we don't think you can do that. So when a child isn't allowed to take a risk by us, in their minds it's saying, no, you can't do that. But they haven't for themselves tried. So what that can result in is children going, actually, I don't believe I can do that, or that, or that.
Right.
And their self-belief starts to corrode,
the
essentially.
Self-efficacy, I
Absolutely.
think, is what
Absolutely.
it's referred to, yeah.
And I've seen it in my daughter when I say, I believe you can do this. And when she does it, that smile on her face and that exhilaration, they're the small windows that we want in childhood, so that children think to themselves, actually, I can do that.
Yeah.
Or actually, I can speak up. Or, they are empowered with their own decision-making, but their confidence. And that's the biggest thing I've seen change. We reflected briefly on the anxiety and depression today. A lot of it comes back to the self-belief.
Yeah, I'm sure that absolutely has to be correct, doesn't it? Sarah, you mentioned earlier on that childhood has changed a lot, in that the children, you see kids that don't get outside very much, they don't go to the park, the parents thank you for taking them, which for us as children, that was all just part of the daily routine. We just were let loose. So what are some of the reasons, do you think, that that's changed?
Definitely technology, the screen, and I've seen that with my children, and in our day we had to get the street directory out to find our way around. The Gregory Street Directory. You didn't actually ask Siri to can you tell us where this street is, or Google Maps. So look, technology is definitely part of our children's life, and it's part of ours as well. But it's definitely also a barrier, because when children are on the technology, they're not physically active, they're not getting outside, they're not really having that social connection. So for us, we do say that is one of the priorities. Probably parents, we're very, very busy now, so we don't have that time that we did. I think about my generation, and I probably shouldn't say my age, but I'm 48, so I was
so I
was brought up, my grandmother never worked and was always with my mum. Then my mum worked part-time, and now I work full-time. So to actually have that opportunity to spend the time with your children, actually to take them outside and to take them to the beach, to take them to those parks, and to actually be their teachers, in their lives, talking about the tadpoles, talking about, the change of seasons. And I think as parents, there's so much pressure on us to be able to be perfect at everything. And I just think, we need to stop, take a deep breath, and have some family time. And and I'm really, really embarrassed to say, but I actually schedule it into my weekend now with my children.
That's not embarrassing. That's great.
I actually say, Sundays we are going for a family walk. No, we're stopping. And I have a husband who loves technology. That is off. Let's go. Let's go and explore. And we really need to do that as a family. And it saddens me, I go to dinner and my children go down, hey, Mum, they're not talking to each other. Everyone's on their phones as well.
It's crazy.
It is. It is really crazy. And, as a society, we need to stop and make time.
I think more and more people are recognising that in the kind of wellbeing world that I'm in these days. It's one thing to recognise it, and I think it's another thing to implement it, because it can be quite hard. The social media aspect of the kids' lives, I think, is very difficult because we didn't grow up with it, so it's a little bit foreign to us, and just trying to get the kids away from that. But it's important, isn't it?
It's definitely important. And I'm living with a 12 and 13-year-old, and you've got to set the boundaries, and you need to talk about it. And I see the negative impacts, and we're now seeing all the research that's coming out that's having the the negative impacts on the child's development. So you've really got to put boundaries around the technology, and it is not a babysitting tool. I know it's easy, and I know when I come home from work, it's much easier to say, yes, sure, have that bit longer on the screen, check your Instagram accounts or whatever, than actually saying, no, let's go to the park, let's go for that walk after dinner.
I know it is. It's a trap, isn't it, for parents as well as children? It's hard, really hard. The other thing that I see as well, this is going slightly off topic, is that children aren't being taught skills in the kitchen either on how to cook and nutrition, and that to me is a huge aspect of well-being. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of it, when we talk about cooking, when we were kids, we cooked a lot of homegrown stuff in the garden. And you look at today's gardens, and who are they made for? They're made for adults. They're entertaining, a lot of them. And we've kind of lost that connection with gardening. We've lost that connection with growing those things. So I have 2 daughters. One's 5 and one's 8 months. But the 5-year-old, we're always out there. We're picking spinach. We're making pesto. We have fruit trees. And she's so excited that finally they're blossoming. So the apricots are blossoming. And just outside your window here, you've got some citrus and some blossoms.
Yeah.
And she's talking about what we want to do with it. How do we want to cook it? And we've got a little apron and we cook together.
Oh, that's
and
brilliant.
When we talk about nature play, we inject the whole family unit quality time, which includes things like picking homegrown things or seasonal things if you don't have a garden, and cooking together. And when we cook together, often we just want to cook to quickly feed, to quickly eat. But it's about the whole process. Yes, fingers will get sticky, things will get sticky as well, but there's no technology there. It's just spending that beautiful time together, watching those fine motor skills, push the molds in and those sort of things. So I think we've got to get back to things like homegrown gardening to start to bring those skills back to the kitchen.
And so can you tell us, either of you, about what Nature Play SA actually does and what programs you offer?
Yeah, certainly. So we are an organisation, of course, getting children back outside. So, we really look where our children are. So we run a lot of events, and we're actually just about to go into the Nature Play Festival in the September school holidays.
Fantastic.
We're running 3 major events, which are huge events for 3,000 people with the Nord Council, with Flinders University, and with the Salisbury Council. And we've also gone out to the South Australian community and said, put on some Nature Play events. And at the moment we're working with over 40 organisations. We've got 120 events running throughout the school holidays. So we really try and empower the community to get involved in Nature Play. So we run events, so that's how we touch the families. We create some, amazing resources. And Jason is, he's the brain behind all of our resources to engage children and families to get outside. We also, where are our children? They're at school. So we we work a lot with educators, how to link the curriculum to the outside. And then, also we go into schools and we run incursions. We get the children muddy. We get them, being outside and having a connection. And we're also, a not-for-profit. So I'm also trying to tap into the big boys, into the South Australian government, and making them, make decisions for making sure we get our children outside with, working with the Department of Environment and Water and working with the Department for Education. And I'd also love SA Health to come on board as well and, see the work that we're doing and really how to, get our children outside so they don't get to the hospital first, that we can be proactive and stop that.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you've got lots going on. What have you ever come across kids that are reluctant to get muddy and dirty?
Yeah, that's a good question, Amanda. So obviously, in some cases, there are sensory issues at play where there is an actual requirement to go down a sort of therapeutic route. But also there is, I remember one particular example at an event we went to. We held it for International Mud Day, which we just basically get lots of mud and invite lots of people.
Sounds great.
And everyone gets absolutely filthy. So there was a mum there and she goes, look, one of my boys just loves the mud. And there he was, head to toe in mud. She goes, the other one just doesn't seem to like it. So I doubt very much, he'll get anywhere near it. And I watched him and he went over and he put his finger in and he kind of stirred it a little bit. And these were big mud pits that we created. And he did something really important that a lot of kids can't do today. He watched the other kids. He watched them, observed them, and then he put his foot in. And within an hour, she's just like, came back up to me, the mum. She goes, you won't believe it. Look. And there's her other child launching himself into the mud pit. Covered himself in mud. And it was the fact that there was a little bit of fear there.
Yeah.
And that fear can only in this particular circumstance can only be counteracted by observing, going, actually, I think maybe it is okay. I've got permission to try. No one's forcing me, and I will try. And they didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
and that's an example of risk-taking for
absolutely.
that child, isn't it? Yeah.
And back to the risk debate, which I'm really passionate about, too often as parents, all we want to recognise is the physical risk. We don't recognise the social risk or emotional risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we said, wait, that's filthy, you can't go in there, we've just exposed that child to a really big emotional risk of going, I can do this and I'll do it.
Yeah.
And too often we don't see that.
Yeah. And the other thing that strikes me about that particular story is the boy was given the opportunity, but also the time. So it took him however long, an hour or so, you said, to actually roll around in the mud. Too often you would see that scenario where the parents would say, oh, well, he doesn't enjoy it, and off they go. So that's obviously also important.
Yeah, and I refer to a lot as childhood time. And childhood time is longer periods of time where children can just be, they can just exist, they can make their mind up about what they want to do, they can experiment. And by having that space and that time, that's where childhood can really start to happen. And the research tells us sometimes it takes up to 40 minutes for children to actually come up with the rules of their game.
Oh, right.
And too often, children have 20 minutes to play.
Absolutely.
So the things they do, they go straight for the equipment, quick, and they don't have that time to slow down. And when you get children in slow time, childhood time together, that's when it all happens. The play that we engage with as kids, we start to see it happening.
When you talk about events that you run, what does an event look like?
Yeah, an event could be anywhere from being in Kaipo Forest. So we do an amazing event in the April school holidays where we actually take families into a wilderness space. And we're finding that, some families, talking about risk, aren't confident to go into those spaces. And we work a lot into also Belair National Park as well. So we work in our national parks, but we also work in local government areas, and just showing people that you don't need always a big national park. You can actually just do it in your own, surroundings. So what does it look like? For the next one's coming up is the 29th of September with Norwood Council. That's at Felixstowe Reserve. So that's a brand new, amazing sort of a natural reserve that they've formed. And so we've got over, I think, 10 events. So
fantastic.
There will be, geocaching. We're working with some Aboriginal people as well. So we really like to bring in our culture to our events. Brilliant. And, really educate the families. There's pond dipping, and there's potion making, and, there's everything from for the younger child to get involved, to actually then also to the, teenage children to geocache and get them moving and cubby building. So they're very much family engaged events. They're very, very well run. There's always first aid there in case, some people are, that's there as well. And, there's food trucks and there's coffee for the mums. And so everyone is very, very well catered. And they usually run from 10 to 3. And, there's some amazing stories that we get out of it. And just seeing, my probably favourite one is cubby building in Belair National Park in the July school holidays. We have 2,000, people, come into the national park and build these massive cubbies.
Fantastic.
And just seeing the collaboration, the social engagement, children will spot a car. Jason will find a koala in the tree, and they'll be around there for ages. And for me, it's such a powerful event, and we've never ever had an injury. And that's showing, these children are working with huge sticks and that, and it is just. It's why I do it, is when I see families engaged.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it's for the families that perhaps lack the confidence or the know-how, that's such a lovely way to do it, because they'll go to your event, they know it's safe, They know there'll be things to do. If, say, the parents feel a bit nervous, they know the kids will have activities, and it just sounds wonderful.
Yeah. And that is our aim, is that. And then what we found is that once we've brought the families to these spaces and they've had that amazing experience, they actually then go back and do it themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, as an organisation, that's what we want. We want to empower them, not for us to run these events for you. It's just, you should just do this in your, you know, family time. And, you know, a lot of the feedback we have, you know, we get on Facebook or Instagram, hey, they send us a photo, we came back and we, you know, did this on Sunday with a family. So
that's wonderful. So you're probably providing inspiration and ideas, I think sounds like part of what you do.
Yeah, definitely, Amanda.
In terms of schools, so how do you engage with schools? Like, what are the programs you run at schools?
So what we'll do in schools, we'll run incursion or excursion programs. So we've got an excursion program where we'll bring classes into Belair National Park and build cubbies, or we'll actually go into the schools and run mud activities or geocaching or sensory experiences, and also work with the teachers to show them that the you know, what learning you know, the children are developing through those activities. Then we also mentor teachers as well, and you know, and that's what we find, that the teachers are so overloaded, but we just wanted to say that, hey, you can go and do numeracy outside, you can do literacy outside, you know, STEM and all of the curriculum that they need to do, but you know, it can be done outside. And what we find is when we take those children outside, that, you know, they're so they work so well together. And, you know, some of those children who have behavioural issues are much better, they behave much better outside as well. So, from the educators to the children.
Yeah, there's so many benefits. I know there's research that shows that boys in particular learn better when they're moving. So being outside is probably really good for that. And there's also, in Sweden since the 1950s, I'm sure you've heard of the forest schools that they have over there, where they basically do the learning outside. So they'll, you know, find the letters of the alphabet in the bush and the shapes, I mean. And there's a lot of, I guess, backing to what you're doing. Like it works, doesn't it?
It definitely works. And, you know, we're seeing, we work with so many children. There are so many amazing stories that, you know, children have never been able to sit still, or, you know, haven't been able to work together. And, you know, we find that the social interaction is just so powerful. Yeah. And I was wondering if either of you have thought about or have any opinions about the allergies, because that's something that absolutely fascinates me, because when I was a child, I literally did not know anyone with an allergy, and now, you know, every school sends home notes about no nuts and all those things, and the change has got to be environmental. That whatever we've done to cause that has got to be environmental. And one of the theories, as I'm sure you're aware of, is the sterilization theory, that, you know, everyone's too clean and we wipe everything down and don't get muddy. So do you have a view about that?
Yeah, sure. It's one that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
And we often quote the hygiene hypothesis, which is essentially an overuse of sterilising products. And the way that I explain it is, as children growing up, they're exposed to lots and lots of bacteria. And a lot of that bacteria is basically coming in to help build immunity.
Yes.
Basically, it comes in to go, look, I'm here to test your immune system. You're here to fight me off. So there's this sort of continual exposure to that.
Yeah.
And over time, it grows resilience. And if we eliminate that good bacteria coming in, then when the bad stuff comes, it really comes. And that's where we see an increase in immune-related illnesses.
Yeah.
So the way that we see it is looking at nature as something that's not foreign, but something that's part of us. So when we were kids, we played in the dirt. And we know, in fact, there's a researcher, a neuroscientist in Canada, who often says to their children, don't wash your hands before eating. I'm not advocating that, but that's what he says, because he recognises that good bacteria that's coming in. So I think that, and also by over sterilising everything, we're also giving the indication that dirt is a bad thing.
That's true. I
When
hadn't
actually
thought of it from
dirt
that angle.
is a good thing.
Oh, it feels good.
It's
getting
a good
your
thing.
hands in the soil.
And
doesn't it?
it also, when we get, there's certain things in dirt that activate serotonin in our brains, and serotonin is associated with happiness. So, and as a species, we've always walked on the earth. We've always had the earth in our hands, and we're trying to get away from it.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some consequences. And the research is starting to come out now to say we're too clean.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of other things coming out, research around allergies that are related to hygiene.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And I know that's only a hypothesis, but it sounds like it makes sense. It's plausible, isn't it? So what are some of the reactions you've had? You have sort of touched on this from parents and children who have been involved in your programs.
Yeah, probably one that still sticks in my mind is when I was did a public speaking engagement with a local preschool last year, and this mother said to me after, she goes, I just want to tell you something. And I'm going, oh, here we go. And she goes, and she started crying, and she goes, you've changed my life. She goes, that activity that you ran down at Holdfast Bay, down at Seacliff Beach the other day with my daughter was actually in the water and walking on the sand for over 2 hours with the surf lifesavers, and for over 5 years I haven't been able to get her to the beach, and now she just wants to keep going back, and to actually see how grateful she was and how we've actually changed a family, and now they can do that together, is just is why you keep doing what we're doing. And we have a lot of those stories where we work with children who, some of them may have a few learning difficulties, or their parents have never been able to get them to places, or or they've run away or whatever, but they're so engaged in our events, and we get that feedback all the time, how we've they've had an amazing day, and and thank you, because we haven't been able to do that.
Wow, that's fantastic. And can you add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I think we get lots of good stories, which is just really nice to hear. But probably one of the big ones from a program's perspective is when we helped Assisted Autism SA to do a cubby building in Belair National Park. And for children with autism, one of the big triggers, I guess, for many is crowds.
Yeah.
So we were able to, usually our cubby town is 2,000, 3,000 people, but we specifically held a day just for families that had children with autism. And there was 200 families that came out, and
that's great.
It made a huge impact to their life.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
And for me, when we talk about nature play, a lot of the time we're thinking about, in our minds, we've got these children, all these kids, they climb trees and they play with mud and all of the same. But in actual fact, when we extend it out to inclusivity, then we start to see there's a whole bunch of other opportunities. And more recently, we've done some really good work with St. Pat's Special School. And they've gone from a very concrete, sterile area to one now that they've engaged designer, a natural place-based designer. They've worked with the kids on sensory issues. They have a fantastic OT, and they have this beautiful space that has water, mud, dirt, sand, and it just goes to show that nature is for everyone.
It is.
And it is such a beautiful space that they now have, and the OT and the principal speak very highly of the benefits of giving those children.
Oh, that's great.
And for me, that's why we do. There's many reasons that we say that's why we do what we do, but our influence often we don't realise because we're just so busy. Yeah. We're trying to make a difference to everyone's lives, but we sit back and reflect, and it's very powerful.
But you've had some really tangible examples, though, haven't you? Some real things that have happened. I would like to sort of wrap up today's talk by I ask all my guests the same question at the end. So if you could recommend 2 things that all people could do to improve their well-being, so what would they be? So Sarah, what would yours be? 2 things.
2 things, definitely to get outside into nature and to have time for yourself. I think, we live in a very, very busy lifestyle, and I think, making time for yourself, and connecting with nature.
And Jason?
I have many things, but I won't give you many things. So I'll probably just sum it up with probably one that has lots of different things in it. everywhere I go and the parents I speak to, the schools I speak to, they're at very different points in their life. And often they think that when we say, get more nature play in your life, that they need to change overnight. And sometimes it seems that it's not doable, it's not possible. So I always say to people, look at the ratio of stuff in your life, look at the balance. So if your children have 3 hours of screen time a day, make it 2 hours and take an extra hour outside.
Yeah.
Or we just start to look at, because if we slowly change the ratio, we change the culture of a family unit. And that is the most important thing, is to look at the culture of your family. Do you spend time cooking? Do you spend time growing together? Do you spend time out in nature walking together? And if you don't, how can you slowly introduce those things as habits in your life?
Yeah.
And as an adult, we need that time too.
Yes.
And we cannot underestimate it, because every person you ask would be very familiar with the term, I just need some fresh air. Which basically means I need some nature.
Yeah.
And if we don't get that fresh air, we can't breathe. So we need to get out into nature. And whether that's walking around on a beautiful day like today in the street, just listening to the birds, that's nature. So it's finding time for ourselves, but then also changing the balance within our family unit.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because you're looking at it in a very practical way. Because I think for some people, making a change can be quite daunting. So if you just do it bit by bit, it makes it a lot easier. And I'll just mention that every person I've interviewed, no matter what area of well-being they're talking about, whether it's mental health, nutrition, physical health, nature just has come up again. So, it's just important in every aspect of our life, I think. So thank you both so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Amanda. It's been great to be here. Thank you.
That was Sarah Sutter and Jason Tyndall of Nature Play South Australia. I will put a link to their website in the show notes. You can subscribe to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. And while you're there, click on the bell to be alerted when new episodes are available. You can also subscribe on your favourite podcast app, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. And you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Direct links to all social media can be found on the subscribe page of my website at www.amandaswellbeingpodcast.com. If you would like to contact me, you can send me a message via the contacts page on my website. Please feel free to suggest topics you'd like to learn more about and people you'd like to hear interviewed, and I'll do my best to deliver that to you. Producing the podcast is a labour of love. We put in a lot of time, money, and effort behind the scenes. So if you enjoy Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast and would like to make a contribution via Patreon, PayPal, or Amazon to help ensure we continue to provide you with excellent content, please visit the contribute page on my website. Finally, please take a minute to leave a rating on iTunes. It improves visibility and will help me source excellent guests. Thank you for tuning in. Eat well, move well, think well.